So continuing with the discussion of the Dhatu Vibhanga Sutta, I'd just actually like to go back. I've just had the chance to get Analayo's draft essay, which I referred to a little bit earlier, and just have a look at more specifically what he says about this idea of the yogi annihilationists. It's perhaps noteworthy that the Dhatu Vibhanga Sutta says Analayo and his Majjhima Agama parallel agree on mentioning existence, bhava, and non-existence, vibhava, in their description of the intentions that are left behind at this stage. Oh, sorry, that was my mistake. Earlier I said that I thought that they had differed on that point, but no, that they actually both agree. At first sight, the reference to non-existence might strike a surprising note, since the same expression occurs in other discourses on a par with annihilation, a topic that doesn't seem to stand in any obvious relation to the development of the immaterial spheres described in the present passage. Such a relation can, however, be found in the Brahmajala Sutta and its Chinese, Sanskrit and Tibetan parallels, which, in their treatment of the different types of annihilationism, take up the immaterial attainments. For those of you not familiar, the Brahmajala Sutta, the first sutta of the Digha Nikaya, discusses a famous list of 62 kinds of wrong views and is a rather encyclopedic analysis and treatment of the various kinds of philosophical approaches found in India in the Buddha's day. And one of the many kinds of different kinds of views it talks about is the view of annihilationism, as described down the bottom. The recluse Gautama... Oh, sorry, that's not how it's... That's not from the Brahmajala. Oops, that's how Buddha is described by other people. Okay. This suggests that in addition to those who denied rebirth and assumed annihilation to be the inevitable destiny of all beings, for example, Ajita Kesa Kambali, non-existence may also have been considered a goal to be reached through meditation practice, in particular through attaining the immaterial attainments. Elsewhere, the discourses reckon those who uphold such a view to be upholding the supreme among outside views. Bhikkhu Bodhi describes that in an essay in 1992, or a note we wrote in 1992, that it may be that those referred to in the Brahmajala Sutta do not regard annihilation as the ineluctable fate of all beings, presumably meaning inevitable, but as the ultimate destiny and highest good of the spiritually perfected saint. They may be formulations of those mystical theologies which speak of the annihilation of the soul in God, the descent to the divine abyss as the supreme goal of their contemplative disciplines. On this interpretation, those beings who have not reached the summit will still be subject to continued existence, while those who reach the peak will attain the supreme good of annihilation. So that's a quote from Bhikkhu Bodhi in an earlier essay. And Analayo then notes, though in a recent personal communication, Bhikkhu Bodhi has expressed doubts if his suggestion can be substantiated by actual evidence in other discourses, to me it would seem difficult to come up with a better interpretation of this part of the Brahmajala Sutta. And this issue has not just been discussed by Bhikkhu Bodhi and Analayo. It's curious, actually, Analayo didn't... Normally he gives all the references, but I believe that there are some other scholarly references to this discussion as well, which I can't recall off the top of my head. I think maybe Jayatileka might have discussed it. The formulation of this supreme among outside views speaks clearly of an aspiration for future non-existence, a formulation used by the Buddhists with a small but decisive change in formulation as an expression of their own aspiration. And that's in reference to a particular passage which is found a number of times in the suttas. And the phrase is, it shall not be for me, it will not be for me. No chasa, no chamesiya, na bhavisati, na maya bhavisati. It can be found in a number of places. In each instance, it functions as a mode of practice that leads to high attainment. Bhikkhu Bodhi explains that by replacing the first-person verbs with their third-person counterparts, the change of person shifts the stress from the view of self implicit in the annihilationist doctrine. I will be annihilated to an impersonal perspective that harmonizes with the anatta doctrine. So what this is not entirely clear, his explanation is not entirely clear here. Here's the annihilation view as held by the outsiders, the non-Buddhists. namely, I shall not be, and it shall not be for me. I will not be, it will not be for me. That's the non-Buddhist view. And then the Buddhist one, which the Buddha teaches, is it shall not be for me, it will not be for me. So it's moved from a first person to third person. Actually, it's a very kind of subtle point in Pali, and there are a number of variant readings and divergent interpretations of that. And that particular passage was clarified through discussion between Bhikkhu Bodhi and Venerable Ñāṇatusita a number of years ago. And then they kind of realised that it should be consistently read in that way, because there are different formulations, because they're so close. It's difficult to sort out exactly what's the difference between the Pali and between the Buddhist view and the non-Buddhist view. So it's an interesting little detail, sort of showing how the Buddhist idea is very close to that idea of annihilationism, but at the same time is fundamentally different from it. It comes from a fundamentally different place, and not assuming that there's a self which needs to be annihilated. And so if you don't understand that difference, then you will, of course, confuse them, and you'll accuse the Buddha of being an annihilationist, as we find in this quote from the Majjhima Nikaya, where the Buddha is in fact accused of teaching the extermination and non-existence, vibhava, of an existing being, an accusation which the Buddha had to face on a number of occasions. Now the formula, such non-existence, vibhava, through attaining the immaterial realms, may well be covered in the standard formulation of the second noble truth in the Pali discourses, which reckons craving for non-existence as one out of 3 types of craving that lead to renewed existence. Though suicidal intentions would be one mode of this type of craving, the same may well not exhaust all the implications of craving for non-existence. On this interpretation, the 3 types of craving listed under the second noble truth would to some extent reflect the 3 realms of existence. So you have kama tanha, bhava tanha, and vibhava tanha. Reflect the kama tanha being, of course, the sensual realm, bhava tanha reflecting the jhana realms, and vibhava tanha reflecting the immaterial realms. Judging from these passages, then, the reference to forming an intention in relation to non-existence, vibhava, found in the Majjhima Vibhanga and its Majjhima Agama parallel in the context of the treatment of the immaterial attainments, fits its context quite well. So that discussion has been removed by Analayo from the final version. I guess probably it's probably a bit too long, and leads a bit astray from the main focus on the sutta. But nevertheless, I think it's an interesting parallel. Hello. Thank you. Yep. So worth paying attention. I mean, it's interesting how I think with that idea of annihilationism it's always an interesting drive. The Buddha said it is one of our fundamental drives. Of course, it's also Freud identified the death wish as being one of the fundamental drives. And it's interesting that it can take very kind of crude forms, which are very kind of destructive, like suicide and self-destructive behaviour and drinking and drugs and all of those kinds of things. There's always this sort of part of it is always a drive to annihilate yourself. But it can also take very refined forms, even through practice of meditation. So if you have this view which informs your meditation practice, even though you meditate to quite a profound level, that view can still infect the meditation, and it still conditions what you're actually wanting to get out of it. So we've reached a point in the sutta where he has basically got enlightened. There's no more coming to any state of being. That's basically pretty much all it. Just briefly refer over to before going on to discuss what happens after you get enlightened, always of interest. Then we will just look briefly at the comparative study. We've already done that. We've already gone up to that point. Okay, anyway, basically the other versions are all the same up to that point. The next part is also I really love, and this is describing the state of mind of an arahant. If he feels a pleasant feeling, he understands it's impermanent. There's no holding to it, there's no delight in it. If he feels a painful feeling, he understands sa anicca, it's impermanent. Anadjhosita, doesn't hold on to it. Anabhinandita tipajanati, he doesn't delight in it. If it's neither painful nor pleasant feeling, then he understands it's impermanent. There's no holding, there's no delighting. When he experiences a pleasant feeling, so sukhanche vednang vedeti, visanyuto nang vedeti, he experiences it detached. When he experiences a painful feeling, he feels it detached. When he feels neither painful nor pleasant feeling, he feels it detached. When he experiences a feeling, when he's feeling a feeling of the ending of the body, kaya pariyantikang, he understands, I'm feeling a feeling of the ending of the body. When he feels a feeling of the ending of life, jivita pariyantikang, he understands I'm feeling a feeling of the ending of life. And then he understands with the breaking up of the body after death, udhang jivita pariyadana, udhang jivita pariyadana, those things which are all that is felt. The dissolution of the body, the ending of life, all that is felt will come cool right here. Udhang means above. Jivita is life. Pariyadana, I'm not sure what pariyadana is. Okay, on the dissolution of the body with the ending of life, all that is felt with the ending of life. Udhang. Sorry? Pariyadana? Yeah, something like that. It's dispersing or getting ending life. I'm not sure what the udhang is doing there though. Bit confusing. Anyway, idheva, right here, all that is felt, not being delighted in, will become cool. So notice the kind of the difference in the kind of the attitude there between that the difference in the annihilationist kind of views. You're trying to make an ending of things, trying to get rid of things, and so on. He's not trying to finish everything. He's not trying to not get reborn. He's completely detached from either being or non-being. When the body breaks up at the ending of life, all that is felt, when I'm not delighting in it, will become cool right here. Siti bhavisanti. So this is, I think the best translation of Nibbana is just coolness. Okay. And then it goes on to give a simile. Just as an oil lamp burns in dependence on an oil and a wick, and when the oil and wick are used up, if it does not get any more fuel, it's extinguished from lack of fuel. Anaharo parinibbayi. Anaharo parinibbayi. Now this is, notice the use of the language here. So the Tealapadipo is the oil lamp. Jhayati. Yeah, so the oil lamp is burning, but it's also doing jhanas. No? Which is used as a pun in some places, like in the Samanyapala Sutta. You have Padipa Jayanti, the lamps are burning in the hall, which you could also translate as the guides are meditating in the hall. But what's important about this passage, as with very many passages in the Pali, is the use of the fire imagery, and this being a web of imagery to talk about samsara and nibbana, which is constantly used throughout the canon. The word nibbana here, in its native sense of the going out of a flame. So in the simile, you find nibbayati, used in a verb form, is the going out of the oil flame. So it's burning is jhayati, going out is nibbayati. Why does it go out? Does it go out because somebody makes it go out? No, it goes out because anahara. It doesn't have any fuel. It doesn't have any food. It doesn't have any ahara. Now, ahara is actually both in terms of meaning and pretty much in terms of etymology as well, a synonym of upadana, grasping. And both of these words, ahara and upadana, have a duality of meaning, where on the one hand they mean grasping, attaching, holding on to something, and on the other hand they have a meaning of fuel or food or nutriment. So ahara is actually a normal word in Pali for food. Here it refers obviously to the fuel that's keeping the fire going. So when you starve the flame, it goes out, parinibbayati. So this is very lovely ambiguity of imagery here. So you can translate this as the flame goes out for lack of fuel, but you could also say you could also in a different context use the same words to mean attains nibbana through not grasping. Okay, so a slight change in the grammar and so on, but basically the same terminology.
Jhayat is interesting because this is the meditator goes out, the person doing jhana goes out.
Right, yeah.
It's a simile which maybe is meant to make sense in the context of jhana practice.
Very much so, and especially in the context of this particular sutta, where it's just been talking about the consciousness purified and bright, bright like the oil flame of the oil lamp, and it's that bright purified consciousness, that jhayati, which then goes out, nibbayati. And so this is where you see that these simple metaphors which the Buddha uses, when you consider them closely and look, the more you look into them, the more you see that what there is to them, the implications that start to emerge. They're not random by any means. And the Buddha, as always, uses this ABA format, makes a statement, gives a simile for it, and then comes back and repeats the statement. And so in the same way, feeling a feeling with the ending of life, he understands I'm feeling a feeling with the ending of life, feeling with the ending of the body, or a feeling with the ending of life, or he understands with the ending of the body at the break after death, the body will disperse and all that is felt will become cool. Not being delighted in will become cool right here. Tasma, therefore, a bhikkhu thus endowed is endowed with the highest foundation of wisdom, paramena panya. So this is a usage of the word. Notice the usage of the word paramena panya. Obviously in the Mahayana Sutras you find the prajna paramita, the perfection of wisdom, became a very powerful, very famous terminology, and this is an early usage of a very similar phrase, paramena panya, highest wisdom. Esa bhikkhu aparama panya, so with this highest noble wisdom, this is the highest noble wisdom, that is to say, the knowledge of the ending of all dukkha. I think so, yeah. I think they're basically just their paramita is always given a number of different etymologies, but I think the basic root of it is para, to go beyond.
But the translation is different. The paramita, it means para, ta. It means
gone beyond.
Going to the other side.
Yeah.
So I think the root is different. So the meaning different as well. Parama is the supreme.
But it's still from the same root.
Not the same root.
Is it? Yeah.
Paramita, para.
Parama.
The root of the verb is e. And the parama is not concerning to any verb.
No, but isn't if it's paramita, isn't it still para, and then the root e,
yes,
yeah,
root e.
Yeah, gone beyond,
Yeah,
but still the para is
but
still the para is still the same root.
Parama is not derived from the same root.
It's not derived from the it root, but they both share the para in common. Yeah. Parama is just the superlative of para. So the para is the same, but it's derivative. I'm not sure.
I think it doesn't use the sense of Mahayana, use the word paramita.
Oh no, it certainly the sense of it has shifted. Certainly, yeah. But this is, I think, I do think that they are connected, because if you do find passages like this, it's also parama panya, it does sound very similar. And I think actually what's likely is that the meaning has just shifted because of dialectical usage, and the etymology probably comes after that. But I think it's probably originally the same word, parami and paramita. That's my suspicion anyway. Huh?
Going back to Sutta
Uh-huh.
Did you break it up to show the part of the ending of the suffering, the sabba, dukkha?
Okay, sabba, dukkha, kaye.
What's kaye? What is that?
Kaye extinguishes.
Yeah, extinguishing, going out, ending.
It doesn't have a vowel in front of it normally, is it?
It's just kaya. The root is kaya. Okay. Yeah, it's in locative form, so it's knowledge regarding the ending of all dukkha. Yeah, and the word kaya is one of these words. It's usually translated as destruction, but actually that's a really bad word. It never means destruction. Kaya always means is like when you're crossing the desert and you run out of food, is kaya, or if the stream is in a drought and it runs out of water, is kirna sota. It's like a dried up stream, or the waning of the moon on the dark half of the month. So it's always that idea of running out or using up or fading away, and not sort of something being bashed over the head with a hammer, which is kind of what destruction means. Sorry? Blown up, yeah. And that's very much in line with this particular sutta. It's the flames being going out. It's run out of fuel and gone out. Okay, so that is actually the ending of that whole passage. If you come back to the beginning of the sutta, you remember that we had the summary, which was the 6 elements, 6 bases of contact, 18 kinds of mental exploration, and 4 foundations. And then the tides of conceiving, and so on. One should not neglect wisdom, one should preserve truth, could cultivate relinquishment, and should train for peace. Now those last 4 are in fact the 4 foundations. One should not neglect wisdom, one should preserve truth, one should cultivate relinquishment, one should train for peace. And so everything we've done up to now has been the not neglecting wisdom. Okay? And that's the explanation of that. And we're now going on to the explanation for preserving truth. which is a bit shorter. Okay, so then it says, his release, being standing on the truth, is unshakable. Because that bhikkhu, which is false, which is of a delusory nature, and that is truthful, which has an undelusory nature, is nibbana. Okay, so this is the sense in which you can say that nibbana is the highest truth, because it's the ending of all delusion. Therefore, a bhikkhu thus endowed is endowed with that highest, again this word parama, foundation of truth, because this is the highest noble foundation of truth, that is to say, the non-delusion, which is nibbana. Non-delusory, yeah. So amosa dhammam, an unfalseness, unfalse nature, undelusory nature, something like that. So I also, to me, this is also kind of a really. I found this to be a very powerful passage or powerful reflection, that the nature of that the reason why that release, the freedom of the Arahant, the reason why that freedom of the Arahant is unshakable is because it's founded on the ending of that delusion. Once you've seen that truth, you can't unsee it. It's a complete lack of delusion, a complete ending of delusion, and that's what is called nibbana. So it's nothing else.
What do you mean by delusion? Yeah?
Well, I would say delusion is the not seeing. He's explained all about the development of wisdom beforehand. So it's all the things that have been undone by the development of wisdom, the attachment to the idea of a self and permanence and all of those kinds of things.
It's like once you know how a magic trick works, you don't believe it's magic anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So before you think, the woman is floating and he's making her float,
Right.
and you see the thing behind the scene.
Yeah.
Even if you see it again,
Yeah.
you know it's not true.
And it'll never be so much fun.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
before that, you always have this kind of, what if actually it is floating, or
Right.
what if that person actually is reading your
Yeah.
mind?
Yeah.
But after that,
Yeah.
you can't.
Yeah. Okay. So then the next one is the cultivating relinquishment. So that was the second of the four foundations. So we've had the not neglecting wisdom. We've had the the foundation of truth, the preserving of truth, and now we have the cultivating relinquishment. Formerly, taseva ko panapubbe avidrasano upadhihodnti samatta samadina. So previously, when he was ignorant, then he undertook and accepted acquisitions. I can translate it as pillows or stuff. I like stuff, personally. He had upadhis, he had stuff. Now he's abandoned, cut them off at the root, made them like a palm stump, done away with them, so that they're not subject to future arising. Ayatinganupada Dhamma. Therefore, a bhikkhu possessing this relinquishment possesses the supreme foundation of relinquishment, the paramena chagadhitanena. So notice use of the word chaga for relinquishment. For this, bhikkhus, this is the supreme noble relinquishment, namely the relinquishing of all stuff. Sab upadi pati nisago. Formerly, when he was ignorant, he experienced covetousness, desire, and lust. Abhijja hoti chando sarago. Now he's abandoned them, cut them off at the root, made them like a palm stump, done away with them, so that they're no longer subject to future arising. Formerly, when he was ignorant, he experienced anger, ill will, and hate. Now he's abandoned them, cut them off at the root, made them like a palm tree stump, Formerly, when he's ignorant, he experienced ignorance and delusion. Now he's abandoned these, cut them off at the root, made them like a palm tree stump. Therefore, a bhikkhu possessing this peace possesses the supreme foundation of peace, that is to say, the pacification of greed, hatred, and delusion. Yeah? So this is the highest noble peace. Upasama is the peace pacifying of, or the stilling, perhaps a better word, the stilling of greed, hatred, and delusion. So that's the four things. That's what it was said. One should not neglect wisdom. One should preserve truth. One should develop relinquishment. Jagamanu bruheya. And one should practice, yeah. One should train in peace. This is what it was said, and for this reason it was said. So that's the four foundations. And then goes on to talk about this lovely phrase here on the tides of conceiving. The tides of conceiving do not sweep over one who stands upon these foundations, and when the tides of conceiving no longer sweep over him, he is called a sage at peace. So it was said, and with reference to what was this said? So it's a beautiful Pali phrase. Yatta hitang manyasava nappavattanti manyasave ko pana nappavattamane munisanto tivuchati. Not swept away by those tides of conceit. Manyasava. Tides of conceit, the streams or the flowings of conceit. The munisanto tivuchati. Munisanto, the peaceful sage. And what does that mean? And the Buddha goes on, Bhikkhu, I am is a conceiving. I am this is a conceiving. I shall be is a conceiving. I shall not be is a conceiving. I shall be possessed of form is a conceiving. I shall be formless is a conceiving. I shall be percipient is a conceiving. I shall be non-percipient is a conceiving. I shall be neither percipient nor non-percipient is a conceiving. And these are, of course, referring to various kinds of conception of the self and identity. And many of these are similar to theories of the self which are encountered once more in the Brahmajala Sutta. I am this. So I am is the most basic form of conceiving. Asmi. Okay, ayang ahamasmi. So asmi was like the first word according to the Hindu philosophy uttered by the first man, Manu. Ahamasmi. I am. I am ahamasmi. So this, notice the two different ones here. I am, asmi, is the most basic form of conceit, and then I am ahamasmi. I am this. And the difference between the two is that while asmi or ahamasmi is a simple assertion of identity, I am, this one is more developed. This is a theory about I am. I am this. Yeah, it's getting more complex as it goes on, and then it gets even more complex still. I will be. So you're not just talking about what is in the present, but you're talking about what's going to be in the future. I'm going to live after I die, for example. Na bhavisanti. Oh, I'm not going to live after I die, for example. Rupi bhavisati. And then it gets even more complicated as you go on, right? It's no longer just I am. It's not even I am this or I'm that. I'm going to exist after I death. What kind of form am I going to be in after I exist, after I die? Rupi bhavisanti. I'm going to be possessed of form. Okay, so I'm going to have some kind of physical existence after I die. Arupi bhavisanti. I'm going to be formless. We've already seen that. The formless attainments leading to rebirth. Sanyi bhavisanti. I'm going to be percipient. Yeah, so in other words, I'm going to be aware when I'm reborn. Asanyi bhavisanti. So you have the asanya satta, the non-percipient. Neva sanya na sanyi bhavisanti mannita metang. So I'll be neither percipient nor non-percipient. So born in the sphere of neither percipients nor non-percipients. So all these different kinds of conceiving And notice how in many of the examples here, it's always taking some of the khandhas or some of the one or other of the khandhas as a basis for this conceiving. So notice how it moves from this basic I am, gradually grows, I'm this, what am I, will it be? So you're moving in time and then becoming more specific, and then when it becomes more specific it starts invoking the 5 khandhas. Here it's only the rupa and sanya mentioned specifically, it's 2 of the 5 khandhas. Elsewhere, of course, other khandhas are mentioned in the context of rebirth. For example, that I'll be blissful in my future life or something like that.
So which is the Pali word for conceiving? Is it Manyita?
Yeah, manyita.
Is that related to mana?
It is, yeah. It's a noun form related to mana. Yeah. From man thinking, isn't it from the same root? Manti is thinking, though, isn't it from the same root as mana?
A kind of projection.
Isn't it? Yeah, isn't it the same root as mana though?
No.
You sure?
No. We can check anytime.
Can check. I thought it was different forms derived from the same root. Worth checking though. Where's the dictionary? Do I have the dictionary yet? No. Okay, let's check. Comes up with Milho when I put an M in there. I don't have the Unicode font. Let's just try that. It's starting with search. See if I get anything here. This is just giving me here we go. Measure. Manasa, mind. Choose manas. This is probably one of the longest entries in the dictionary. Vedic manach. See etymology under manyati. So mano and manas and manyati, so etymologically the same. Mana, minati, Vedic mana. Oh, maybe it is a different root. Minati. Oh, so it was the same root. Mana, Vedic mana has 2 meanings, so it's already called mana in the Vedas. Measure and building. Mapeti. Manata. Man. There's another one. Oh, okay, this is another root. So high opinions, conceit, pride. It's the definition of root. See, partly under maneti, partly under minati. So partly from, it still has, like mana still has the idea of measure to it, right? So mana still definitely has that idea of measure. Yeah. Yeah, comparing. Manita. So it's also a weight, which makes sense. Maneti. Honoured. Maneti, to admonish, maimed, honour, revere highly. So manita. Oh, okay. So mana, pride, it's here. It's related from the causative of man. So it's a causative form, to make higher.
What it calls man.
Sorry? Yeah, so causative of man is mana, so this is where the long A comes from. So I think they all go back to the same root. So the reason why becomes a long A is because it's a causative form. It's derived from a causative form, to make more of, to make it bigger, to think highly, think more of. So you think more of yourself. So yeah. Anyway, but that's a very interesting and convoluted root, and it already has a rich array of meanings already, even in the Vedas. So, but here in a Buddhist context, manyana or manyati is used in two senses. It's used in a neutral sense. You find that quite commonly in the standard passages like the Anatalakkhana Sutta, Tanking manyata bhikkhave, rupang niccang va anicchang vati. What do you think, bhikkhus? Is form impermanent or impermanent? Yeah, it's just asking it's a value-free context, right? What do you reckon? But here it's used in a much more value-laden way and pejorative sense of saying that it's about conceiving, it's about getting caught up in your mind, it's about identifying a sense of self with all of these things. Manyitang, conceiving, bhikkhu, is a disease, a boil, a dart. It's because of surmounting all kinds of conceivings that he's called a peaceful sage, Muni Santo. The sage, because a peaceful sage is not born, does not age, does not die, does not shake, and does not, what's beheti? Does not yearn. Okay, translated, so does not yearn. So he doesn't have anything in him by which he would be born. Not being born, how could he age? Not aging, how could he die? Not dying, how could he tremble? Not trembling, how could he yearn for anything? So it's with reference to this that it was said, the tides of conceiving do not sweep over one who stands upon these foundations, and when the tides of conceiving no longer sweep over him, he's called a sage at peace. So, bhikkhu, bear in mind this brief exposition of the 6 elements. Sankitena. So this particular point is one where I think the only point so far where there is a difference between the different versions. All of them have the same 4 maxims about the wisdom, peace, relinquishment, and truth. But then when it talks about the notion of the peaceful sage, according to the Pali and Tibetan account, the sage who is beyond such conceivings will not be born, grow old, or pass away. The Chinese version, however, does not speak of being born of not being born, growing old, or dying, but instead describes that the mental peace accomplished in this way leads to transcending dislikes, sadness, vexation, for fear, and attaining nibbana. The Chinese discourse continues with a standard description of full liberation, which in the Pali version already occurred at an earlier point, while the same Tibetan version has the passage twice, both earlier, so this is a passage about rebirth being ended and so on, earlier and at the present junction. And Alio gives a bit of a table showing the different organisation of it. So there's a slight difference here that the Pali and Tibetan versions talk about not getting born and so on, whereas the Chinese version purely talks in psychological terms about abandoning abandoning vexation and so on. So interesting little difference there. So then it goes on. Okay. When the venerable Pukusati thought to himself, "Indeed, the teacher has come to me. The sublime one has come to me. The fully enlightened Buddha has come to me." Then he rose from his seat, arranged his upper robe over one shoulder, And prostrating himself with his head at the Blessed One's feet, he said, "Venerable Sir, a transgression overcame me, in that like a fool, confused and blundering, I presumed to address the Blessed One as friend." Oh, that's just so evil. "Venerable Sir, may the Blessed One forgive my transgression, seen as such for the sake of restraint in the future." "Surely, Bhikkhu," says the Buddha, "transgression overcame you in that like a fool, confused and blundering, you presume to address me as friend. But since you see your transgression as such and make amends in accordance with the Dhamma, we forgive you. For it is growth in the Noble One's discipline when one sees one's transgression as such, makes amends in accordance with the Dhamma, and undertakes restraint in the future." So, of course, addressing one's teacher in that familiar way was considered to be a breach of etiquette in those days. "Venerable Sir," goes on Pukusati, "I would receive the full admission under the Blessed One," and we've already noted how it's somewhat unusual that he doesn't ask for both the going forth and full admission, so presumably already considered to have had the going forth. "What are your bowl and robes complete, Bhikkhu?" "Venerable Sir," he said, "my bowl and robes are not complete." Bhikkhu Tathagatas do not give the full admission to anyone whose bowl and robes are not complete. So I'm not entirely sure what that means by saying his bowl and robes are not complete. Maybe he didn't have his Sangati. Maybe in some cases people would just collect arms in their hands or something like that. Maybe he had a skull for an alms bowl or something. So?
He doesn't have robe and bowl.
Maybe.
He has a robe.
Yeah.
He has a robe.
He might not have all of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
He shaved his head and put on robes. He's got some kind of robe, but just,
Yeah, he
something
will
to
show
see.
him the robe and bowl.
And then the Venerable Pukusati, having delighted and rejoiced in the Blessed One's words, rose from his seat. After paying homage to the Buddha, keeping him on his right, he departed in order to search for a bowl and robes. Then while he was searching for a bowl and robes, a stray cow killed him.
Oh.
It's a bit of an anticlimax, isn't it?
I actually have a theory about this system.
Uh-huh.
You know how some people are so evil that they immediately die, so they can go to hell and enjoy the fruits of their evil deeds right away.
Uh-huh.
They can't wait.
Uh-huh.
It's the same with people who do really good karma. They just
Uh-huh.
need to go to heaven and
Uh-huh.
enjoy it right away. And
Uh-huh.
so they die.
Okay. And the cow is just there to help that process.
It just sort of can't just work its way through, and the cow just sort of plays its part. And
Yeah, well, maybe.
I think it's been one of those, that group that had raped a courtesan together and killed her, or killed the courtesan together and she vowed vengeance and then went around slaughtering them when they became arahants and noble people in the day of the Buddha. There's a whole slew of them that are explained by that one incident.
Yeah.
A whole bunch of fellows who...
Yeah. I can't remember the details. Vaguely I can remember it. Yeah. But that's right. Yeah, there are more details elsewhere about his story. Badya, yeah.
And the dwarf.
Anyway, he got hit by a cow.
A lot of stray cows.
In India, there's lots of stray cows. Yeah.
Yeah, many of them, and it's roaming everywhere. Yeah, this is very common in India.
But how often is it that they kill people though?
I
I mean, they're not very big.
Huh?
Indian cows are not very big.
Big. In New Delhi, you don't see some of them are really big, but they are not aggressive.
They're not aggressive, no. I mean, the bulls can be big. I don't know. I mean, maybe in some places they are, but most of the cows I've seen in India are pretty scrawny.
Some in New Delhi, I saw they are very big.
Are they?
But
Maybe.
they are not aggressive.
I think you might be bigger than an Indian person.
Maybe. Yeah.
I remember seeing something in Notable Anilio's comparison there. Didn't the Chinese add something about the Tathagata existing in past, present, and future? Or something like that? Or is that in the next sutta? Right after it mentions about the Chinese not having a bit about rebirth.
Can you come to the last paragraph of Pali, Bhante?
No, I can't see anything on that here.
Okay, maybe it's...
Yeah, so I'll just finish reading the sutta and then we can go and have a look at those things in detail. So then a number of bhikkhus went to the Buddha, and after paying homage to him, they sat down at one side. They told him, "Venerable Sir, the clansman Pukusati who was given brief instruction by the Blessed One, has died. What is his destination? What is his future course? Because the clansman Pukusati was wise. He practiced in accordance with the Dhamma, did not trouble me in the interpretation of the Dhamma. With the destruction of the 5 lower fetters, the clansman Pukusati has reappeared spontaneously in the pure abodes and will attain final Nibbana there without ever returning from that world. That's what the Blessed One said. The bhikkhus were satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words.
Can you show the Pali equivalent? Pali
For which part?
paragraph with the last part.
The last part?
Yes, of Pandito.
Pandito Pukusati Kulaputto Pachapadi. Dhammasanu Dhammang. He followed, almost like he followed step by step in accordance with the Dhamma. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and he didn't hassle me with. He says interpretation of the Dhamma, but adhikaranang is adhikaranang is like dispute. He didn't hassle me by arguing about the Dhamma. Pukusati, that's the same word that's used. Adhikarana is like an issue in the Sangha, yeah? Even issue, yeah? He didn't hassle me by making issues about the Dhamma, yeah? Pukusati, the clansman, having, with the ending of the 5 lower fetters, has reappeared spontaneously, Opapatika, and will attain final Nibbana there without returning from that world. Mm. Did you find that bit?
No, but there's no.
Yeah, there's just a bit. Yeah, maybe it's in the next sutta that bit was, yeah. Okay, okay, so according to the Madhyama Agama version and the discourse quotation in the Abhidharma Upayaka Nama Tika, Abhidharma Koshupayaka Nama Tika, indicated that Pukusati attained stream entry while listening to this exposition. Interesting, no, it doesn't note that. But according to the Pali version, also notes in the commentary that he attained stream entry, and according to the commentary, he attained stream entry at which point? You can look in Bhikkhu Bodhi's notes anyway. It says he became stream entry at the point of. No, he became a non-returner. And when did he become a stream enterer? Anyway, according to the Pali, he became a non-returner, became a stream enterer during the discourse and became a non-returner towards the end of it. Whereas the Chinese version, Madhyama Agama, and the Tibetan version say that he merely became a stream enterer. All versions report that Pukusati, realizing that he'd met his teacher, apologized for not having recognized the Buddha and not having treated him with the proper respect. While the Madhyama Agama version ends at this point, the other versions continue by saying that Pukusati was killed by a cow. The monks reported this accident to the Buddha, who, according to the Pali version and the individual Chinese translation, told them that Pukusati had become a non-returner, whereas according to the Tibetan version, Pukusati passed away as an arahant. Sorry?
What version that he attained Sotapana?
The Madhyama Agama version and the Tibetan Shamathadeva's version say that he became stream entry while listening to it. But he could become an arahant or non-returner afterwards, I guess.
And what version
The Tibetan version says he died as an arahant.
The Tibetan version also says he was hit by a cow.
And it says he was hit by a cow.
As an arahant.
Yes. Well, he could have got hit by a cow and then become an arahant immediately after that. Reflected on the suffering that's inherent in samsara. You just meet your teacher finally after walking all the way from Gandhara, and then you get hit by a cow. It's like, this is truly dukkha. I gave up my kingdom for this. And no, it said on all those gold leaves, it didn't say anything about cows. So it's quite it's quite normal. One of the things that notice in the sutta that all the teachings is basically exactly the same across all the different versions, but the account at the end of his attainments does differ to some degree, and this is quite a normal situation and quite an understandable one. Obviously, it's much easier to know what was said in a discourse than it is to know what is the spiritual attainment of people who are listening to a discourse. Analayo finishes by just noting that there's another discourse in the Samyutta Nikaya and its parallel in Samyutta Agama, which agree with the Pali version and the individual translation by reporting that Pukusati had been reborn in a realm where non-returners take birth. So there seems to be good support elsewhere, both in the Chinese and Pali canon, for the idea that Pukusati was in fact a non-returner.
Did you say this is a quite early sutta?
I did not. I made no comments about the date or otherwise of the sutta. Why do you ask?
Oh, I was just wondering that it could be. It sounds like it's kind of it's in a later part of the Buddha's ministry, because at the beginning he's just a bhikkhu, but now he's just kind of asking for a bow and
Yeah. Although, I mean, according to the account in the Vinaya, it was fairly soon that he introduced those, the more complex ordination procedure. So, yeah, I mean, obviously it wasn't right at the beginning, but it doesn't mean it was late. Yeah.
So it might be late in his translation, because now he asked people to have bow and draw. Formerly he didn't ask.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean it was very late. I mean, it means it was after the first few months.
Yeah, but he already called him a bhikkhu beforehand, so
Yeah.
it doesn't seem to be such a big difference between
No.
the tradition of just going forward.
Yeah, I can't see anything that's... I can't see anything particularly about it which suggests that it's either early or late, really. I have to look at it more closely, but certainly there's very strong correlations with 4 different versions, all of which agree almost completely on pretty much everything. So that's strong parallels there. It seems like an early sutta to me.
Well, Bhante, I think you're using the word early differently. Because you're using it in the technical sense of when it might have appeared as a teaching during the Buddha's lifetime versus later, and I think she was asking about early or late versus, whether early in the Buddha's lifetime or late in the Buddha's lifetime.
Yeah.
But also, nowadays we have a lot of concern about the legality of the ordination, and from the sutta, the Buddha doesn't really mind that someone ordains them.
Right, yeah. This is actually referred to, interestingly enough. This particular example was referred to by Samdet Jnanasangvara, who wrote a book on the lineage, the ordination lineage in Thailand. He's the current Sangharaja of Thailand, but before he was Sangharaja in the 70s, he wrote a book about the ordination lineage and the emergence of the Dhammayut. It was basically a sort of justification and explanation of where the Dhammayut ordination lineage came from. And it's very interesting, actually. It's a very interesting book. It's called Buddhasasana Vangsa. And he has a very kind of moderate and reasonable discussion of these kinds of issues. And he cites a number of cases, one of which being this case, another one being Mahapajapati, as being examples of ordinations which are blameless even though they didn't follow according to the accepted procedure. And he talked about the transmission of the ordination into Thailand, and he talked about in quite a lot of historical detail about all the times that it's come to Thailand from India and then back again and then to Sri Lanka and back and Burma and so on and so forth. And it basically ends up making the only reasonable conclusion, which is, well, no one really knows where the ordination lineage actually comes from. But he cites this kind of example and says, well, it's blameless, just like the example of Pukusati was blameless. Yeah.
It seems to me that going forth used to be something which you originally something you did, and then it became something which was done to you.
He often says that people buy yellow roads and then they wander off. They don't say, oh, I found a teacher and then I asked him to give me
Sure, yeah.
It's not like that. It's more like, I will get out of this suffering and then you wander about and then you find a teacher and then you're like, hey, wow.
Absolutely, yeah.
Including the Buddha.
Yeah, including the Buddha.
Cut his hair off.
Yeah.
Got some rag ropes from another guy and then...
Mahakassapa again, another example. Yeah.
But it was probably rather standard rather than
an
exception.
Yeah, but you still do get cases like that. I mean, even in Thailand, and I'm sure in other countries, people will sort of go forth and practice for a while, not necessarily with a formal ordination, and they may or may not choose to get an ordination at a later date. Yeah.
I think it was interesting the when Pukkashati kind of attained the power jhana. He meditated and it assumed that he attained the power jhana even before he did any teaching. That means the practicing of the jhana in India is a common thing and not exclusive in Buddhism.
Yeah.
According to the story, he gave some Buddhist teachings before.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
He heard about that.
Yeah, he heard it. He didn't. Yeah. I mean, I have to say, of course, that the background story, colourful and nice as it is, isn't found in the Sutta, and it does have a number of slightly implausible elements, like the kind of wandering from some part, missing Savatthi on the way down. I personally find that quite implausible, really, because that Savatthi is the main trade centre, and you're on that route. I mean, I find it impossible to believe that you'd wander down from that northern road through Savatthi without asking somebody.
Bhante, I took it to mean that he went to Magadhan Kingdom looking for the Buddha, and then there learned that he was actually at Savatthi.
But that's right, but he would have had to go through Savatthi on the way.
So you're saying that he could have passed the Buddha on the road?
Well, yeah, he could have done, but I just find it a bit implausible. I mean, if the Buddha's in Savatthi, which he was most of the time, that's where the northern road goes through. Savatthi was the trade centre. All of the roads went to Savatthi. Yeah? That's why they call it, according to the commentary, it's called Savatthi because Sabangati, it's got everything. So, if you came down that road, that's where you'd go. And, surely you'd see monks around the place and you'd say, hey, have you seen the Buddha? I don't know, I just find that a little bit implausible. Yeah.
Well, one of the things I noted about this sutta is that it seems to be talking about jhanas, but it doesn't use a standard terminology. Maybe because this guy was a skilled meditator, but he was not familiar with the actual terminology, which the Buddha was usually using. So the Buddha gave a custom-tailored teaching without actually bothering with the normal.
Maybe. Although he's not. I mean, he's not really talking about. I mean, maybe. It seems to me that it's more that he's just, and the commentary actually states that he's actually already mastered fourth jhana. So it's just talking about it on a wisdom level. He's not actually addressing the topic of jhanas directly.
So with the question on four elements, is that only thinking just about the body as being made of four elements, or does the Buddha go into maybe in other suttas talk about how the four elements relate to personality or mind aspects as well? Like how in Ayurvedic medicine, elements relate to your personality and the kinds of thoughts you have.
No, there's nothing. I don't think there's anything really like that in the suttas. It talks about relation. I think maybe in the Visuddhimagga you might find something like that in the different personality types. Yeah, relate them to different kinds of. I mean, some of them are pretty obvious, right? Yeah. So if you've got a lot of anger, then you've got a lot of fire and stuff. So, yeah.
Is that a sutra?
But then classic.
So Visuddhimagga is the sort of the classical Theravadan meditation treatise, written about 400 AD, and sort of it plays a similar role in Theravada as say people like Nagarjuna and Asanga or so on play in the Mahayana schools.
A subtle understanding to your practice.
Sorry?
Subtle understanding for understanding
Right.
practice.
Yeah, except Visuddhimagga is not so much about the philosophical understanding, like say Nagarjuna or someone is, but it's more of an encyclopedia really. It sort of gets all of the different teachings on all the different aspects of the path and sort of lays it out. It's more like a systematic treatise. Yeah, maybe something like the Lam Rim, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. I haven't read the Lam Rim, but it probably plays a similar role in Tibet in Theravada as the Lam Rim does in the Gurukh tradition.
I just thought it was interesting if Buddha had something like, the New Age things as well, like characteristics of people. What are they called? Like, what was the word used? Like personality types.
Yeah.
Buddha actually spoke about
Yeah.
types.
Yeah, he did talk about different personalities and things in there's quite a few suttas here and there that talk about that kind of thing, but yeah, it's not really systematized. Yeah, but there are some interesting things. But in the Visuddhimagga, it does talk about that in quite some detail, and it's quite funny actually, the description of the different people and how you sort of tailor the different practices and meditation objects for the different people. Yeah.
But in the classic Four Elements explanation, it's really talking more about detaching from the body.
Basically, yeah.
And it seems like that wouldn't be enough to get to the higher attainments, would it? You're just breaking down the attachment to the body, but not the attachment to the mind parts.
Well, that's one. Yeah, Vijnana se vavasisati. Vijnana is all that remains.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So
yeah,
it's
but then how does this break down the attachment to the mind as being a self?
through looking at the feelings. Yeah, so remember that whole analysis in terms of the feelings, the origin of them, painful, pleasant feelings, contact.
Yeah.
Not attaching to any of those feelings. Yeah.
This Sutta gives some information maybe contradict with your Visuddhimagga. Because in Visuddhimagga it's a contemplation on the four elements. The analytic of four elements only lead to the not just even the third jhana.
Right.
But here it seems that the analytic of the four elements may lead to four jhana. Isn't it?
Whether it leads to it or is based on it, seems to me like it's after fourth jhana. Or it's certainly related to jhanas. Yeah, what it does, but it doesn't specify what the relationship is. But I would tend to agree with that, though. I mean, I don't agree with that aspect of the Visuddhimagga. I think basically any meditation can lead to letting go, and any letting go can lead to jhanas. Yeah.
Is there a quick explanation of what the four jhanas are?
Cool.
Very cool.
A little bit more of a middle-length explanation.
Jhanas are states of deep concentration or samadhi, where your mind withdraws from the senses and becomes completely unified and still for a period of time.
So when the mind completely withdraws, is that the first jhana?
It can be, yeah, although it can be psychotic dissociation or a number of other things as well. So, yeah, you want to have a look in detail at the particular circumstance. It's not easy to be able to sort of say and assess these things, but generally that's the idea as the mind's become...
And the fourth jhana is the meditative stabilisation that can cause you to become an arhat?
You can become an arhat based on any of the jhanas, but fourth jhana is the coolest. Yeah, it's the most stable and so on. Yeah.
Give it a second first.
Yeah.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
You turn it upside down.
You can, I think. You can try.
That's all I want.
That's all you want.
That's what I've been working towards.
Oh, okay, excellent. Yeah, you've got to have a goal. Yeah.
It seemed to me in the Sutta that Vijnana seemed to be something like mind and awareness.
Right.
Do you agree there?
Yeah.
It's not exactly the usual meaning of Vijnana.
Yeah, it seems to be used in a slightly more pregnant sense and a bit more like we're used to hearing the word chitta.
Yeah.
A bit more of that kind of centre of awareness. But it emerges from, I mean, the word vijnana is used in those 6 elements. I mean, that's where it comes from originally, in that particular context. We start out with the 5 elements in vijnana. Yeah.
Right. Yes.
Vijnana dhatu. But even in that case, it seems to be broader than, say, in the khandhas or something, because it's basically just stands for mentality as a whole.
Yes, this is like consciousness as in like the Western sense, which is like sort of like animates the living thing.
Right.
Thoughts.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so that's the Dhatu Vibhanga Sutta, and so as I said before, one of my favourites. Very rich, and I always find it a very moving one to contemplate. And I think that profundity of that kind of movement through understanding the wisdoms to that clarity of awareness and then liberation is something that I find to be very. For some reason, I'm not sure why, but this particular sutta I've always found has moved me very deeply.
And what you said, it's a passionate practice. It's describing that. So, is there a certain name for that practice, or
a certain name?
Yeah.
Not. I mean, you could give it a name if you wanted, but no, not really. Yeah.
It's just a level of instruction.
In the Theravada tradition, we just call it vipassana. Yeah.
Did the Bhagavasati recognize it was the Buddha himself? Or just because with his wisdom, he suddenly realized who it is that's sitting in front of him? Or was it because the Buddha didn't attribute this teaching to anyone else, but it actually just delivered a sutta on the spot?
He didn't say it on those suttas.
Right, no, I've heard, no, this is what they say. This
That's
is
right,
what
yeah.
is attributed to someone. It was just, I'm going to tell you the truth and just...
I don't know, maybe, but I'd always assumed that he just kind of got it at the end. He realised, wow, this guy's really out there. And especially feel like, if he's being led along from that state of profound meditation he'd already been in and led to those deeper realizations, and he's like, oh, this must be it. This must be the guy. It's the man.
It's like when the disciples recognised Jesus because of the way he explained the teachings.
Well, it's because he had a hole in his side, isn't it? that was doubting Thomas.
You want to stick your fingers through the hole, you wouldn't believe.
But yeah, it's the same idea. Okay, let's finish up by paying respects.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Samma